News is our Week in Review panel. CoinDesk Managing Editor of Technology, Christie Harkin in Toronto, and Managing Editor of Markets, Brad Keoun, who is in Austin live at the Texas Blockchain Summit. Hello, Brad and Christie.
Hi.
Hey, Christine.
How are things going on down in the conference, Brad?
Yeah, it's a pretty good conference, Christine. It's hosted by an organization called the Texas Blockchain Council, which is an industry council, and obviously they have a lot of, like a lobbying element and just kind of an organizing element here in the state of Texas, pushing for pro-blockchain technologies. The conference itself is pretty pro-Bitcoin. I mean, it's very much dominated by Bitcoin. I just, walking up the escalator, was talking with Mance Harmon, the CEO and founder of Hedera Hashgraph, which is another blockchain, and he was even kind of lamenting that it was very Bitcoin heavy. But, everybody here in Texas is super fired up about Bitcoin specifically. There's so much energy in this state. They're putting in a lot of Bitcoin miners. A lot of the migration from China, that's one of the big ideas, is a lot of the hash power would migrate to Texas. Nick Carter spoke from Castle Island Ventures. He was talking about, he thinks there could be 2 to 3 gigawatts of Bitcoin mining here in Texas by the end of next year. One of the things he was talking about was we have a lot of flared natural gas. So even if you think Bitcoin's bad for the environment, if you just, can burn the flared natural gas, it's just gas that's wasted and they burn it because they don't have a pipeline and get it to the market. And you can tap that and mine Bitcoin with that. He thinks, it could be enough to represent 34% of the total hash power of Bitcoin. So there's a lot of excitement. It's a very well attended conference.
Yeah. A lot of creative energy usage ideas there. And Texas seems to be emerging as a crypto mining hub. Certainly this week we learned that Core Scientific is building a 300 megawatt blockchain data center in Texas, increasing their total power capacity to more than 800 megawatts. Also, Argo Blockchain also recently agreed to buy 20,000 mining machines for a data center it's building out in West Texas. Argo also was saying that Texas has some of the cheapest renewable energy worldwide. Christie, I know you were just making some comments earlier to us that if there's any concern that the Bitcoin mining in Texas could wipe out the energy grid, that should not be a concern.
Yeah, I think that when the power starts to go out and people start looking for places to point their finger, Bitcoin's a fairly easy target because it does admittedly use a lot of energy. That's kind of the point of proof of work. However, it's important to keep in mind that the problems that the energy grid has in Texas is an infrastructure one that predates any of the major draws on it from the Bitcoin ecosystem, and that a lot of what is happening with Bitcoin energy in Texas is from stranded or not readily available energy sources to the general public. So it's not the one that's turning off your microwave in Texas, if you're concerned about that.
All right. Good to note. All right, turning to the markets, Brad, a lot of excitement in the Bitcoin community with the price jump that we've seen this week. And, I just presented a chart on more adoption among institutional buyers or a whale. We know that on Wednesday, there was someone who bought $1.6 billion worth of Bitcoin on a central exchange in a short time span. So, tell me your thoughts on the activity this week.
Sure, Christine. Well, there's always these narratives that are going around. So one of the narratives was, Gary Gensler is not going to ban crypto, right? And then JP Morgan Bank of America starting research coverage. So there's these narratives, but yeah, sometimes it's like where the rubber hits the road is where people are actually buying in the market, and that drives up the price. And, that's really interesting because the question is how much of, this, institutional demand for Bitcoin is kind of expected and therefore already priced into the market. But then when you see, and somebody comes in and they have a really big buy, and it does actually drive up the spot market. And then we trip up past some, technical levels of the chart, and all of a sudden things are looking bullish. I mean, we're up $12,000 from where we were this time last week.
And the market cap is over $1 trillion.
Yeah. I mean, it's... Go ahead.
Okay. And I just want to ask about the new support and resistance levels. The market cap is over $1 trillion now. What do you see some of the catalysts going forward?
I lost you just for a second there, Christine. Go ahead.
No worries. So I was saying that the market cap is now over $1 trillion. Where do you see the new support and resistance, amid this bounce? What will this continue?
Well, okay, so, we crossed up to, I think, just above 55,000, and it was the first time that had happened since May. So, we had this big decline with all the China news, the crackdown there. And that's kind of, people are past that now. I mean, we're back where we were in May. We're still, a ways off the all-time high, but not that far. We came up $12,000 in the past week, and we're now about $10,000 from the all-time high, around 65,000. I mean, it's very volatile, obviously, Bitcoin. But once it gets going, it can really get going fast. So, technical indicators are looking bullish at the moment. And, we'll see what happens next week. But we're definitely within shooting range of that all-time high.
Right. Christie, also this week, CoinDesk, the research team, released a third quarter report on the crypto markets. And the miners seem to be holding on to their BTC rewards.
Yeah, that's one of the things that has been sort of emerging from various quarterly reports coming out from not just us, but from the miners themselves. And what we're noticing is things like the shares of crypto miners, like Marathon Digital, Hut 8 Mining, Riot Blockchain, their stock actually is going way up. Marathon up 250% this year, Hut 221%, Riot up over 57. Like everything's going up. People are really investing in the mining industry, especially in North America, because that's where the growth is. We also are seeing the difficulty adjusting upward for like the sixth time in a row, reflecting 12 straight weeks of increased hash power on the Bitcoin network. And that's what you're going to see as more and more North American mining companies are bringing more and more hash rate online. And as you mentioned, we had Core Scientific adding an extra 300 megawatts of power for future hosting, a future hosting site for more and more Bitcoin mining.
Christie, we have a chart of the Lightning Network capacity growing there in the third quarter report as well. Maybe you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so the Lightning Network is the layer 2 protocol built on top of Bitcoin that enables fast, instantaneous transactions, very, very low to no cost. It is the network that's underpinning what's going on in the Strike wallet that is being touted down in Central America, used across the US, and it's doing extremely well. The Lightning Network now has over 3,000 Bitcoins, which is over $164 million in liquidity, in capacity. So you can send, the fact that there's that much liquidity in the system makes it a lot easier for people to use, for people to find channels to transmit Bitcoin quickly from place to place around the world.
Fascinating. All right. So we're seeing more adoption. So, Brad, China had that crackdown scare with, Bitcoin mining ban. More recently, they were going after trading loopholes, especially on offshore exchanges. Is that all in the rearview mirror now?
I mean, it's hard to get great information, but in terms of the market, possibly. I mean, the news is out, and it became very clear, obviously, that China was serious this time. But what's interesting is that the Bitcoin price, it really has recovered. As Christie's talking about, the Bitcoin network has recovered. It just keeps marching on. I mean, kind of one of the other narratives is that this might be really good for Bitcoin, that China, essentially tried to snuff it out, at least in their domestic industry, and yet it keeps on chugging. And, we're talking here in Texas
Right.
about, there's a lot of people who see a lot of opportunity.
And the macro picture is not looking the greatest. I mean, we had a jobs report out that missed expectations. There's a debt ceiling crisis on the horizon. China real estate defaults to be worried about. And yet Bitcoin doesn't seem to care at the moment.
It lost almost half of its hash rate, and yet no downtime. And it's recovering. So it can sustain a blow and just keep on ticking as long as the network has the support that even have the support that it has, and people are still building on it. And I think that's a lot of the potential there. A lot of what drives it. It's the potential that we're still early, and a lot of what's being built is in early stages. Even the Lightning Network that is functional right now, it's still early stages, and its developers will tell you there is a lot of work to be done. There are still vulnerabilities that need to be worked out, and there's a lot of room for, say, user interface development that's going to make it a lot easier for people to use. It's still tricky. Bits of Bitcoin are tricky to use, and that is still on the horizon. And I mean, wait till that happens.
Mm-hmm. Brad, did you want to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say, one of the stories in the market is that Bitcoin seems to be decoupling from stocks a little bit. This week, as you said, Christine, there were some things in the market that were putting pressure on stocks, and Bitcoin was going up. It's the perception now. I mean, there is this thread of like market logic that the authorities don't have the stomach to watch the stock market go down. So the Republicans were ready for this big standoff over the debt ceiling. And then as soon as the market started to get a little nervous, the Republicans quickly caved. And people kind of think the same thing about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve moving to taper its asset purchases. And there is a line of thinking that if they do that and stocks start to go down, they'll quickly back off. And that would, again, bolster kind of the inflation hedge appeal of Bitcoin. If they basically just keep printing money and they keeping stocks from going down, but meanwhile Bitcoin's mooning. That's kind of the idea.
Right. An alternative system for people to put their money in. Switching topics, Christy, I want to talk about Mt. Gox for a second. The doomed exchange that was hacked repeatedly from 2012 to 2014 until it went bankrupt. Today is the last day for victims to vote on a reimbursement plan, correct?
That's right. So yeah, Mt. Gox shut down in 2014 after losing thousands of Bitcoins and also fiat currencies as well, and a few minor cryptocurrencies just got wiped out, and it went into bankruptcy. And there was a process by which the creditors, the various people who lost money, have been trying to recover it. And finally, after several years, 4 years of back and forth, the adjudicators involved in the Mt. Gox dispute in trying to recover that money came up with a proposal that would at least partially reimburse the people who lost a lot of money. And that proposal was up until today open for voting, a yes or no vote from the creditors. It started on May 31st and closed today. So the creditors have had over 4 months to cast their votes, either by mailing them in or voting electronically through their accounts. And what the tricky part is that 50%, at least 50% of creditors need to vote yes on this proposal in order for it to move forward and start reimbursing people, which doesn't sound like it's that hard to do because it seems to be a very popular proposal, and especially since it's taken so long for people to actually see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of getting their funds back. The problem is that anybody who doesn't vote, that counts as a no automatically. So there's no such thing as an abstention. You have to vote or else it counts as a no. So you can have the majority of people who actively vote. It can be an overwhelming yes, but if not enough people actually vote, those count as no's. That means that the proposal fails and it's back to the drawing board, and who knows how long it's going to take. So it'll be curious. I'm curious to see in the next few weeks whether
it's certainly been a very long and drawn out process for those victims. I mean, it's been, it's been 7 years. All right. So Brad, we gotta wrap it up there, but I want to quickly just give us a markets look ahead, looking very bullish. When will we revisit that all-time high? What do the technical indicators say?
Well, just based on what our reporter in Mumbai, our Star Markets reporter, Omkar Godbole was writing today, that again, just moving up through this, some of the latest levels that we burst through this week. And we're seeing higher lows, and so we're and various other